Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
I'm Holly. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is October 14th of 1991. Really grateful to be sober. Yeah, my home group is the Cornerstone Group in Lake Charles. We meet on Thursday nights at 6:30. It's a closed literature study and discussion, so please join us if ever you're in the good old town of Lake Chuck. I'm so glad that I get to go first this weekend because I would not want to follow all of the amazing speakers that y'all have coming up. Now, I have some doubts about your Sunday morning spiritual speaker because I know Craig, and he's not very nice at all. So I just want to put that out there. I'm hoping that he'll use some of his time Sunday morning to make amends. I'm really glad to be here. I love stuff like this. In Louisiana, where's my Louisiana people? We go in packs. Louisiana, we have like over 20 of these in our state in a year. Okay, so in Louisiana, we like to party drunk or sober. That's just how we are. But it's an honor always to do anything for or in Alcoholics Anonymous. So, okay, what happened to me? What happened is I was born. I was born. That's it. Thank you. Have a good night. And I was born, and my parents were together and divorced 6 months after I was born. That does not make me an alcoholic, although for a long time I thought it did. And there were some people who were willing to sign off on that, but that's not why I'm an alcoholic. I grew up with my mother, also not a reason I'm an alcoholic, but thought for a long time that's why. But I grew up with my mom, and each of my parents, I have sort of a confusing family. Each of my parents have 3 kids from 3 different people. So they taught me, like, it's important to play the field, you know, kind of stick your foot in a little bit and do the hokey pokey. And so I grew up with a single mom who partied a lot, and there was a lot of excitement in our house all the time, parties, people, and kind of like our house is now, except without booze and drugs. I mean, that's what I grew up in. And turns out my mom had a drug problem and got sent away, and you know, as a kid, that was pretty baffling. So I am one of those kids that ruined your meetings for you, and, you know, raised ruckus and heard the inappropriate things you were saying in meetings and inhaled all the smoke and watched you drink all that coffee. And so that was my experience. Now, my mom did end up going to the fellowship where she identified with the most in Narcotics Anonymous, and I'm very grateful to that fellowship for what they did for my mother. So that's sort of I had an introduction pretty early on to 12-step programs, and I did the Alateen thing when I was growing up, and I was part of little clubs at school that were against all that, and you know, watching my mom and what she went through, I swore I would never do that, and I didn't, but I sure learned how to drink. And growing up in a house where there is no alcohol, it kind of sucks when you discover it. And in Louisiana, I don't know if it's like this in Mississippi, but in Louisiana, we drink early. Like, it's in our baby bottles. It's just not a, it's just a thing. I mean, that's just what we do. But I didn't get the effects or learn what the effects were from alcohol until much later. And I had a lot of catching up to do. And because, I hadn't really drank in 11 years. So I had a lot of catching up to do. So that means I was 11 years old when I started drinking. Okay. So when I discovered alcohol, immediately it was like a love story, if you have a sponsee that like fell in love with somebody and they're all starry-eyed with that newcomer that comes staggering into the room, that was me with alcohol, and later with some of the guys in AA, but that's a whole other story. But so I fell in love with alcohol like immediately, and I had to get pretty creative on how I was going to get this. And see if any of this sounds familiar. For me, it was right away for me. I was not one of those that crossed a line or was a social drinker for any period of time. For me, it was very immediate, very immediate. I felt the effects of alcohol, and all I knew was that it was on. And that was the best stuff on the planet. And all those teams at school and clubs and everything that were telling me it was bad and you would die if you drank a drop, and all that stuff, I thought, man, this is like the best thing ever. I don't know what these people are talking about, but they've been lying. And I found an answer. To me, it was the absolute answer to all my problems. Now, in Bill's story, if you know who Bill is? If you've ever read the Big Book, in Bill's story, he talks about finding alcohol amidst the excitement, right? I found alcohol amidst excitement. I hit my peak in middle school, and I found alcohol during that excitement in my life, and it just kind of went like that. It was a love affair, and I took alcohol, and then it took me. And so this is kind of what it looked like for me. From then on out, it became an obsession, something I couldn't stop thinking about. And because I had limited access to it and had to get pretty creative on where I was going to get it from, I never actually bought alcohol. I did not drink in a bar, all of those things. But I was always more or less insanely drunk. And ladies, I don't know how you drank, but I was that girl, that pathetically gross, disgusting, just nasty drunk almost every single time I drank. And, we've gone to a lot of concerts and stuff, my husband and I, and sober, and, I'll go into the bathroom and you see that girl that's like on the floor, and, that was me. And I just think, God, poor baby. That was me. And I drank a lot on my own from the start. I discovered it with friends, but I kept on drinking on my own. I had, a reputation to uphold of being like a good kid. And and I was supposed to be against all that stuff, so I had this image, So I drank a lot on my own, which suited me just fine, and then I didn't have to share. And I would steal it from, my father when I would go to his house. I would steal it from my friends. And when I was at my mom's later on in my drinking, to get me through to the next time I could get alcohol, I started drinking cough syrup. And cough syrup can be a pretty good friend. Robitussin and NyQuil did just fine. It became my best friend in between that time. So that's what happened to me, and that's what my drinking began to look like. And I was able to uphold this image for a while. But then what was going on inside started showing up outside. And so I started having, those concerned people that are, really bothersome. They interfere and bother me. And I had a lot of people that were very concerned about me. And I do like to say is that even though I was underage and, had parents, I turned everybody around me into parents because my life was such a mess. And if you're wondering if your life is unmanageable, you might want to count how many people were trying to manage your life, because that's a pretty good indicator. And I had a lot of people trying to manage my life because I was such a mess. So here I have these, friends later on in high school that were acting like my parents, telling me what to do, telling me they were concerned, making rules for me, that sort of thing. All because, I wasn't doing such a great job. So we're real good at, or I am real good at finding people to like pick up the slack in my life. And thank God for Al-Anon. But so what ended up happening was I got shipped off to one of those treatment centers, and I stayed there for 7 months, so I was well treated. And I was really confused going through treatment because I did not understand that it was not Alcoholics Anonymous. And it, that particular place that I went didn't just introduce you to AA. It kind of like you had to like work steps in group therapy and things like that. Now, my experience now with the steps is very different than that. But at the time, I had no idea that there was a separation. I had no idea that the steps were in the book. I thought it was like forms that you filled out because that was my experience. So I got out of treatment, and I'm, 7 months sober, and I've worked up to the 5th step, and I am good to go, I'm 7 months sober, and I got it going on, and I come back home, and, I'm the only thing that's changed, and I started getting real scared, and, I'm going to meetings and all that stuff. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard this story before in AA, but I've heard a few, thankfully. But what ended up happening to me was that I did not have a psychic change. I did not have the spiritual awakening that comes as a result of the steps. So this is what ends up happening. I'm sitting in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I have a couple of lurking notions in the back of my head, too, because I'm not even real clear on my problem. I'm just thinking after a while that I'm crazy, because that's what we are when we're sober without a solution. And I'm real grateful that you didn't say, that old adage of you don't drink and don't die, because it's a heck of a lot more than that. At least it has been for me. So I'm sitting in AA, and I'm really miserable. Now I'm smiling real pretty, and I'm acting like everything's okay, and I'm sharing, at meetings. Not any experience, just theory, and basically repeating what I'm hearing in meetings because it sounds good. I don't, it just sounds good. Hey, man, that's cool. This too shall pass, or, step 4, do an inventory, really, I don't know. I'm just spouting off stuff at meetings and just dying. And I had a sponsor, but, it's like one of those things like, she's my sponsor. Isn't she cool? And one of the things that, honestly, the early years of my sobriety basically is that those people scooped me up and I did what they did. So we went to a lot of conventions, we had dances, we played cards late at night. So I got that experience of like kind of how to do some of that sober. So it was a lot of fellowship. And I'm really grateful for that. But again, that didn't spell out the solution for my alcoholism. So I'm sitting in AA, and I'm thinking that I still have an answer, and I have those lurking notions in the back of my head. Do I really belong here? Maybe it was just a phase. Things like that going on. And sitting in meetings thinking, God, not even AA's helping. I'm pathetic. Like, what's wrong with me? Not even AA can help me. Jeez, that's God. And I too was one of those people that showed up at your door. You've probably sponsored quite a few people like me, the ones that have all the answers. And that was me, because I it's okay. I don't really need to work the steps because I have a therapist. And it's okay. I really don't need to do that stuff because I'm reading an awesome self-help book right now. And I'm doing yoga and getting my chakras aligned, and so I'm good. And I'm not talking against that stuff, because that stuff's really cool and awesome and everything, but it was not a solution to my alcoholism. I don't know if anybody knows tonight, but when y'all were doing that sobriety count-up thing, is that you notice that 5 years and up, people start dropping like flies, right? Because that's where we start hitting a wall. And the newness of, like, let's go to another meeting, and like all of that stuff starts to wear off, because you're like, God, I'm sitting with these people still, and you're like, and the newness and the wonder of those first years start to wear off. And at least that was my experience, and I've seen it a lot. I keep getting these sponsees that are like middle year sobriety and just nuts, like I got. I mean, not you, Molly, but but that's what I end up getting. And I'm grateful, because that was my experience too. So that's what ended up happening, was that I still had all the answers, and I had to try them out, because, man, I don't know. A lot of us do all that stuff before we get here. I get here and then do all that stuff. And so I still had to run out of answers just like everybody else. But I'm not drinking. And not drinking's a really big deal, but not drinking and not having a solution that's a misery like I've never experienced. I almost look back at my drinking and think that's, I was like surviving my teenage years that way or something. I don't know. When Bill talks about like not jumping, and he went to the bar instead, I really get that. So I'm sober, I'm in AA, and I'm thinking I'm here, but, nothing's working. So what ended up happening was I'm stark raving sober, like that guy said, is that I was ready to eat a gun. I was miserable. I'm dying. I'm getting real thirsty. And our book talks about mental blank spots. And what ended up happening one day was I had another sponsor at that time, and we had kind of started working the steps, actually, because I had started running out of answers. So I was like willing to like listen. And so we kind of started working the steps, and but she was the only person I was talking to in AA, because, this is what happened to me. Like a lot of people when they're newly sober, I thought, like, I'm sober and I'm awesome, and so I'm going to go to work in the alcoholism field because I do such a great job on my own life. I'm going to go, like, help people with theirs. And I'm not busting on that, because, man, I know some people that are in the program and do a great work in that field. I, however, was a mess, and carried that with me in all areas of my life. I was carrying the message of my mess, and so I have this sponsor working the steps, but she's the only person I'm talking to. Because I no longer, like, really need to go to meetings, because, like, I do that when I'm at work. And it's pretty cool to get, like, paid to go to a meeting. And to, like, do steps with people. I was getting paid for that, too. That was pretty cool. So that starts becoming my mindset, and I'm, like, really different. So she's the only person I'm talking to, so it's, like, my last link, really, to AA, and I get a resentment against her. She said something I didn't like. She was, like, human for 5 seconds, you know what I mean? And I had her up on this pedestal, and she fell hard, and God. And the next thing I know, I'm driving down the street, and I end up in front of a cooler at a convenience store, and it was almost like I came to and realized, why am I here? What am I doing? I'm standing in front of this cooler, and I'm about to grab something to drink, and I just started bawling, crying in this convenience store, and run out the door, which I'm sure the clerk was a little concerned. But so I get in my car, and I call this woman, who I was always like afraid of, because she was one of those like really spiritual people in AA, and you know, and I just thought, like, I don't even understand how she was ever really a drunk, because she's so spiritual, you know, and so good and so nice. But I ended up calling her, partly because I did respect her, but mostly because the thing that my sponsor had talked about, I just knew that this lady was going to sign off on. You know, I still try to find that. Like, I still look for that. I still look for, like, my sponsor to say, you're so right in that resentment. Like, you're totally right, you know. That doesn't happen. And that lady did not take the bait. And I'm so grateful, because really she had a lot of reasons too. And she didn't. And she said, you know, you got your book with you, let's open it up. And we started talking. And she said, you know, Holly, you don't have to get drunk again in order to really look at the first step. So let's talk about the nature of your illness. And we just kind of started off there. And then she also told me something else. She said, Holly, that woman really cares about you, and you have, you know, pulled yourself out of her life. I'm really good at that. Like, she said this really offensive thing, so I just never talked to her again. You know, that totally makes sense. And that woman was so heartbroken, because if you sponsor people, you know that's like a really special love. You know what I mean? And I just shut the door. And she was calling to check on me. She even came by the house a couple of times because she was worried about me. And I remember peeking out the blinds, you know, and not answering the door, because she said something offensive to me. I'm so offended, you know. This is a woman who has spent hours with me. And God, what a brat, you know, so much self-entitlement. But I was entitled because she offended me. And so anyway, that new lady that agreed to work with me, she said, I want you to call that woman, and I want you to let her know that you're okay, and that you're working through some stuff right now with someone else, and that you'll be in touch with her real soon. And when I made the call, I've never, like, prayed harder for a voicemail to pick up, but I was willing to make the call, you know what I mean? Like, and that was big for me. That was big for me, because I was one of those people that sponsor hopped a lot in AA. And I never went back to those people and said, thank you for being willing to help me. It was just like, yeah, you don't have what I want. Next, you know. Or whatever, you know, you're telling me too much truth. Next, you know. So that was me. So for the first time, I had somebody that was like, honey, we're going to be accountable, you know. And I'm so grateful for that. She didn't sign off. She didn't take the bait. She held me accountable, and made me realize, like, I have some responsibility here. And that was her condition. She was like, I'll do this with you, but you need to do this. And I did, and I'm grateful for that. So we ended up going through the steps together, and so this is like, I'm like, I don't know, 5-6 years sober at that point. And that was my big secret, is that I'd never worked the steps. That was my big, deep, dark, dirty secret. Now, I say that, but surely anybody sitting in a meeting with me knew. You know what I mean? Like, if you had been through the steps, you knew. You know, probably to some new people, I probably sounded way profound. But, like, to those who had actually had the experience, they were probably like, oh, come on, you know? So that woman also gave me a lot of her time. And I'm very grateful for that. She was a cat lady. I'm not a cat person, like Jeff says, and I know I've been saying this a lot, but tomorrow morning your speaker thinks she's a cat. She would like to be a cat. She's very offended by people who don't like cats, but thankfully she doesn't let that get in the way of our friendship. But this lady was a cat lady, and she lived in this like tiny Airstream trailer with like 20 cats. I'm not kidding you. And they're like crawling on me, and ugh. God, the worst thing. Okay, no. But I was really willing to work the steps. You know what I mean? That I'm like letting these cats just crawl on me, and so what ended up happening was that I got to clean it up with that previous sponsor, and you know, she was hurt, and I had to like clean that up and make that right with her, and I'm so glad. She ended up being diagnosed with breast cancer, and so we were actually able to have a relationship through that, and so just as she was a part of my life, I got to be a part of her death, and that's an honor to do that. So what's really cool is that Cat Lady sponsor, she sponsored, you know, quite a few people, but one of her sponsees ended up asking me to sponsor her. Same deal. She was angry at Cat Lady, had a big old resentment, blah, blah, and I got to help her make it right with Cat Lady. And it was over a cat too. So anyway, but I got to help her clean that up with the woman who helped me clean it up with this other lady, you know, and Cat Lady, and actually the gal that I sponsored was able to do that before Cat Lady died. She had a stroke, and her cats didn't save her. That's so awful. I have a twisted sense of humor, which is why you should never let me sit next to Tom, ever, ever, ever. That was a bad mistake. You know, Carol was amazing, and she helped me so much, but it was really cool to be able to do that in turn. You know what I mean? So all during this, I'm, you know, working the steps and all that kind of stuff. Now, from the go, I've always had a home group, okay? And we hear that a lot, like home group, home group, home group, okay? Some people think that's just where you go to meetings, and for some people, that's what it is. I was just taught early on, because I just followed everybody around, and part of where I followed them too, I was part of my first group was a kind of small group, and we had these business meetings, and so you know, my sponsor went, and so I went. I didn't know that there was a choice, I just went. But what I got to learn is that if this is my home group, then I treat it just like my home. Meaning, I don't just plop down, you know, and on the couch and watch TV. That means, like, if someone comes, then I have to greet them. I have to make sure the bills are paid. I have to make sure that the door is open. I have responsibilities there, right? Because it's my home, just like I do at my home. Now, when I go to your home, you know, I can enjoy the company. I can, you know, help out maybe, but I'm not, you know, it's not my responsibility to make sure that everything is the way it needs to be. That's your home, you know. This is my home. And then all of this is all of our home. But anyway, so I kind of learned that early on, and I'm very grateful for that. It has just been such a vital part of my sobriety to have a place where I'm just another member. In fact, most of my home group, they don't like me very much. People just aren't nice. You know, they're nice when you're new. So if you're new, everyone's really nice in AA. And then you stick around, and they're not very nice. But anyway, so I just mean they don't, like, throw rose petals when I walk in the door. I mean, they should, but they don't. And not really. But no, it's always been really great to have a home group, and I've had the experience of, like, that first group was a young people's group, and I guess everybody, I don't know, grew up and left AA. I don't know. Decided they weren't young anymore or needed AA. they got married and blah, 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 blah. Some drank, some, I don't know, just left. And so I joined the like super big bad group in AA. I'm sure you don't have any of these here. We had the most meetings, we had all the people, and we had it going on. It was the place to be. And if we didn't see you at our group, then that really meant that you weren't really in AA. So I was part of that group for a while. So while I'm working the steps with this woman, during that whole bout, like where I'm ready to eat a gun, I dropped out of college. I ended up eventually quitting that job at the treatment center. And just, God, I was nuts. But I remember this lady telling me, hey, we really need a secretary for the group. Will you do that? We really need that. And I was like, sure. And I was secretary for like 3 years. You have people like that too. And I was like not going to leave that job because nobody could do it better than me, you know. But it made me feel a part of the group, you know, and it made me feel like I was needed. And then I ran with that, and then I got important, and then, so. But I joined that group, and I was there for a long time, and a lot of stuff ended up happening with that group is that we were providing like a place to meet, really, but not a whole lot else because we didn't have enough members to like do the work, you know, like open the doors, chair the meeting, or make the coffee, you know. But gosh, we can't vote out a meeting because somebody might get drunk. Never mind that they'll show up and nobody will be there and the door's locked, but you know, as long as we still have this meeting. So I went through that for a long time, and I became GSR of that group, which was fun. And I was so excited. I was like, I'm GSR, and I'm gonna wow them with my report, and they're gonna be like struck sober, like super sober, when they hear my report. And nobody was impressed, and they didn't care. And in fact, I even heard somebody mumble under their breath, "What the heck does this have to do with me staying sober?" And so, but I'm really grateful for that experience because what it did was part of the reason that I got involved and did that was because the group needed it, but also because there was a lot of stuff going on in the group, and I had somebody tell me, like, you need to expand your circle of AA, because that's where I was going to meetings. You know, because if you went to any other group, like, that was wrong or something. I don't know. So I did that, and it did. I met some other people, and I remember my friend that told me, like, you should do that, said, you're going to meet people that love AA like you do, and you'll expand your circle. And I got to tell you that part of my experience, kind of selfishly and personally in service, has been that I have made friends while I've been serving on committees and all of that stuff that have been the longest lasting friendships that I've ever had in AA, because they were built on a strong foundation, because we worked together and played together and all of that stuff. So I'm really grateful for that, some of the best friendships. And so I'm GSR, and I'm going to district meetings, and I'm loud, and I'm like asking a lot of questions, and they wanted to make me alternate DCM, and you know, all of that stuff. But what it did was it got me to area assembly, and I realized that like my group wasn't the only one that was having problems, and that like these weren't new. You know, like I thought my group was like facing stuff I had never seen before. And it turns out that we are really creative people, and we really are. Like, and it just cracks me up what we come up with sometimes, man. It really does. And now when I have like a sponsee that's having a problem at our home group, I'm like, psh, yeah, been there, done that, you know. But that's what it did for me. It made me realize that A was bigger than just the four walls of my group, and that that like there was a need to be a part of, you know, passing it on. During this time, I met the friend that was telling me to get involved. He this guy really spent a lot of time with me. Now, let me tell you that, and I always have to say this when I tell my story, that I was one of those girls, too, that came in, I was in high school, and I wore my Catholic schoolgirl uniform to AA. I'm really sorry. I really was not doing that like Alicia Silverstone in the Aerosmith video or anything. I wasn't. But I just had no idea. And the reaction of some of the older members let me know pretty quickly. And not because they told me not to or told me lovingly or anything like that. It was because some really inappropriate things were said to me. And I was an underage. And some of these guys were old enough to be my grandfather. But anyway. So I learned after a while, like, don't wear the school uniform to AA. But I also was one of those girls that, like, I show up at AA and I'm like, I don't trust women. And, you know, I've always just been one of the guys and, you know, the same song and dance a lot of us do. Oh, I'm sorry, am I telling on in here, y'all, tonight? So what I had someone that told me, Holly, the reason that you don't trust women is because you're not trustworthy. See how people are so mean in AA? Now you will find some guys that'll be like, oh, it's okay, sweetheart, I understand. Let's go study the big book together. It's 13 steps to my house, But I'm really grateful that not a lot of guys were willing to take the bait on that. And the ones that I was actually spending some time with, and this guy actually I got to spend some time with, and by that time I'd learned how to have AA brothers. And that means we don't want anything from each other. You know what I mean? So I ended up spending a lot of time with this guy, and he had some experience with this stuff, and he starts, like, challenging me, like things that I thought and, all of that stuff. And the way that we met, actually, was he was a speaker at this convention that I went to, and he just was speaking some stuff from the podium that I'd never heard of before. It was like I was like, what AA is he talking about? What is that, I don't know what he's talking about. And I was very curious, and I wanted to hear more. It was a message of depth and weight, I realize now. It was a message of depth and weight that I heard. And I wanted to know, like, how I could just not be, like, old in AA and saying, I'm still sick and that's why I'm here, like, that I could actually get better and still be a part of this, not just all about me all the time. And so he spent a lot of time with me, and he encouraged me and has helped me over the years be of service. And I'm so grateful for that. And I learned, too, that, like, at that time, I thought that people who spoke at conventions, because they, like, wear jackets and ties and stuff and pretty things and sparkly tops and all that stuff, I thought that they were, like, some elite AA thing, like there was some class of AA, that was different and better. And sometimes we treat them like that, too. Have you ever noticed that? I have. And it's bad for them and bad for us, man. Bad. So I learned that, like, he was just a drunk just like me and, drank like I did and had, some of the same experiences. And what that did was widen my circle even more. And now we have, like, this whole rowdy crowd of people that we're friends with several states away because of it. I was so hungry for this thing. I kind of stalked this guy, actually. I'm very grateful that I'm friends with his wife, who's also in AA. But I did. I was so curious about what he said and what he shared. I just wanted more. And so at that point, you couldn't stop me. Now, for a long time in AA, I've always said that, like, I'm sitting in AA and I'm not hearing a solution. I wasn't, it was early 90s, so there was still a lot of, like, other stuff that was going on in AA at the time. And, that's why I loved it when I got out of treatment, because you were saying some of the same stuff that I heard in treatment, like I'm an alcoholic because I had a crappy childhood, and I need to work on my inner child and stuff like that. Anyway, ping pong brain. So I end up getting involved and doing all of that and widening and all of that stuff. Now there have been, and I've been involved in service for a while, and there have been times where I was only doing service. And I got to say that the three-legged stool works all sorts of ways. Just doing service has not, you know, while it got me there, while the commitment held me accountable and got me there, I also still needed the recovery part too, and I still need to work with others, and I still need to be part of a home group. So for me, it's been all of those things, being right in the middle of AA. Now, my favorite thing always is just working with another alcoholic. And God, I got some interesting girls. They really make me grateful for the people who have sponsored me. They're wonderful. Really grateful for the people who sponsored me. And I love that. And I will always have time for that. Right now, I am serving as the delegate for Louisiana, and love it, and it's fun, and it's just what I'm doing right now. And in another year and a half, it's going to be someone else's turn. It's it's an honor to be able to do that. And here's the reason why. Okay, this is not because I aspired to be a delegate or that whatever. I wanted to drop out at one point. And I had like a list of reasons and mostly resentments that I was going to drop out and not do the service stuff anymore because, I had better things to do, like watch my favorite shows on TV. And so I remember, calling one of my friends that I turned to in service. And I don't know why I call some, again, really, why do I call these people? They're so mean. But it's because after a while I want to hear the truth, because I know that finding people that sign off on my stuff is not helpful. But anyway, so I called a friend and I was like, look, we just had all this stuff go down, blah, blah, blah. Vote didn't turn out how I wanted. These people are just crazy. A's going to die, and, we're all going to get drunk, and, it's horrible. And my friend said, oh, Holly, did you think that you were in charge of your life again? And I, and then said, Holly, we've invested a lot of time in you in AA. So now it's your turn to invest some time back into AA. And so just when I'm getting like tired or like I don't wanna or things like that, I hear that little annoying voice in my head that tells me to get off my butt and go do, and then I think about too the people that have spent so many hours with me, Cat Lady, and what's ironic is that the sponsor before her name was Kitty. So, but these women and these men too in AA that spent time with me, like I'm the person that keeps you up till 2 or 3 in the morning because I'm not going to get honest till then, So what I'm really here to tell you is, I'm one of those people. I have a sponsor that does that all the time. She'll call me, big, long conversation, then all of a sudden, well, I have something to tell you. So I think about those people, and I know that it's time for me to do the same. Because all my life, and especially in my drinking, I was so much of a taker. And I wanted to give, but I didn't have anything to give. And if I did, it was with strings and, for you to notice how wonderful I am and things like that. So this deal in AA is that, that I get to just be a part of this. And the most important thing that I am today is a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. That is the most important thing I am. Back home, a was talking with a sponsee whose sponsee just celebrated a year at a big group. It's the new super group in our town, and I was like, oh, is that her home group? And my sponsee got real quiet. And she said, yeah, I guess so. And I said, did she go to the business meeting? She knew. Yeah, she was like, no. You going to talk to her about that? So that group sure does have a lot of people that show up for the meetings and that celebrate their birthdays there, but they don't have a whole lot of people that are willing to open the door and share the meeting. And that's the most important thing that we do. So I know I'm running out of time, and I just want to say that, for a long time I thought that that's what AA was, meetings. And I hear that a lot too. And Alcoholics Anonymous is so much more than that. It's a program of action. It's something that I do. And it has absolutely been the answer for my alcoholism. And I found a relief through the steps. I had to find out that I was not the one with power, and I had to find out where I would access that power, and I accessed that through the steps. And then I had to get right with my head, inventory and all that stuff, and then I had to get right with the world around me. And then I have to learn how to continue to access that power that pulled me back from the gates of hell. And a lot of the hell is right up here, And so in order to relieve me from that obsession on a daily basis, I have to continue to do those things that help me to access that power, that get me out of the way, and to do the things that then make me a part of life like I was never a part of life when I was drinking. Because everything about my drinking was about me and not participating. So not only did I cause a lot of harm in the things that I did when I was drinking, I caused a lot of harm in the things that I didn't do, too. So life to me now is very much about showing up when and where I can, and I still stomp, and I still throw temper tantrums, and then I go, and it's not a big deal, I think I spend more time fighting that than I do, enjoying it, but that's how it goes, I guess. So Alcoholics Anonymous to me, in those meetings that we go to, what I learned was that that's where we meet. That's where we meet the people that are going to work with us and that we're going to work with. Those people that keep us up till 2 in the morning at the coffee shop and then tell us the truth, just like I did. That's where we meet. And I can tell you that there was a lot of times at meetings that it was just all about me. I'm going to hook up with everybody and see what everybody's doing tonight, hang out with my friends, And now I know that this is where we show up. So thanks to y'all, those of you, that do that. You're showing up, you're sharing, you're cheering, you're, being a part of this thing, because it's much bigger than all of us. And like that guy was talking about, we do stay sober in packs. We do stay sober in packs, and I'm so grateful for that. One more thing. Do I have time? Okay. Okay, so I always do it. I was sharing with some friends a while back, and then when I told my story a while back about this girl that had come to our meeting, my home group meeting, and she's still fairly new, and she was talking about how you plan you're going to get drunk. I'll get drunk if this happens. And she was like, if the world ends, I'll drink, And if you're like me, the world is ending every day, it's all over and all of that stuff. I'm so dramatic. But anyway, I'd forgotten what that was like to plan out, if that should happen, or watching other people in AA going, man, if that happened to me, I would be drunk. Almost I'm planning it out. That's a lurking notion. So I had a huge fear. My little brother, on my mom's side, 8 years younger than me, precious, developed a drug addiction. And watching him was So scary. And we got in a fight one night because he was pulling some stuff, and I was going to be the one that would stop him because that's worked so well with me. And it didn't, you know. Emotional appeal always works so great with an alcoholic or drug addict for him. And I was always afraid that something horrible would happen to him because, like, watching him through his addiction, it was just horrible. And after that fight, I remember I was talking to some friends. We had a local convention going on. They were in town for the convention, and I was like, man, I just had this fight with my brother. I'm one of his people that he goes to. Like, I'm one of his people. And we had this fight, and I feel so horrible. And, you know, I'm just so scared, and I'm crying, and I'm just a mess and so fearful. Biggest fear. I was like, what if he gets in an accident? What if he gets thrown in jail? What if, you know, blah, 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 blah. And my friend looked at me, and she said, Holly, it's hard, isn't it? Because sometimes they die. And he did. We got the phone call actually that very night. It was midnight, and my brother had taken his own life. Because sometimes we can't live with what we're doing. And I thought that was always one of my biggest fears. So that was always my thing of like, that's, you know, that'll be my time. That'll be my reason. And everyone will understand. But not only that, on a bigger level, I was like, if I don't drink, I'll just cease to exist. Like, this is in my mind, it was the most horrible thing that could ever happen in my life. I just knew I would just drop dead. I would just stop breathing and like drop dead. And that didn't happen. You know, and I did get thirsty. And the day after he died, we spent the night at my mom's house. And the next morning I was sitting outside, and I was like reading my little meditations and just kind of sitting quiet and praying. And my mom comes out there and sits next to me, and she was like, how can you do that right now? And I was like, Mom, this is all I know to do. I'm so scared. This is all I know to do. You know, I've got to hang on because I was so angry and so beside myself. And I'm really grateful that I had some people share some experience with me, like, Holly, this isn't happening at you. You know, this is just something that happened, and it sucks. And it's going to suck for a while. And you're not going to show up in AA all happy-go-lucky, you know, and you're going to carry this pain with you right now. And so sometimes it's not about being happy all the time, but it is about experiencing life, good and bad, and making it through that sober. So basically what ended up happening, we were at the wake, and Nick and I met a guy on campus. I kind of 13-stepped him, but anyway, I didn't really, because technically he had 18 months, so I don't know what it is about over a year that makes you qualified to have a relationship, because after a year I wasn't. It wasn't like I woke up on my year sobriety birthday and went, I think I'm ready for a healthy relationship. I have so much to give. That did not happen for me. I don't know. So anyway, I met this great guy, and we're at the wake, and we're sitting there, and it was really quiet. Everybody had gone out. And then, you know, I look, and the row behind us was filled with our AA family, just sitting there real quiet with us, not saying anything, not coming up with profound words to take away my pain, just sitting there with us real quiet. And I had a lot of people, this is what we do, right? They went shoulder to shoulder with me through this, and they just kind of surrounded themselves around me. Through this time that I thought I should not even be breathing right now. And I sat in meetings, and I cried, and you know, I got through my work day, and you know, things like that. And I had a lot of people just talk me through a time that I felt like my skin was inside out, and that I didn't know if I was going to get through. And I'm so grateful for that. And something weird happened when we were going through that, was that it occurred to me, this really sick thought. It's so bizarre. I just remember sitting there thinking, there's probably going to be somebody in AA that loses a brother or has a suicide in their family, and I'm going to talk to him. I just knew, because that had been my experience thus far. It didn't make me grateful for it. It did not make me grateful. I wasn't like, I am so happy my brother's dead so that I can help you. No. But I knew that me going through this would in turn help somebody else someday. And why? Because I had a friend that came and helped me, that had had a similar thing happen to them. And that's how we do this. One alcoholic helping another through our experience, not because one is better or less or anything like that, or that only one of us has the answer, but that together we find the answer. So if you're in here tonight and you have not had an experience being taken through the steps, just grab somebody. Don't grab them, but you know what I mean. Grab somebody and just open the book and just start going through with each other. And just say it. I need some help. I'd like to go through the steps. Or if you haven't done it in a while, do it. Or just better yet, take somebody else through the steps. Because, man, there's just so much more to this. And thank y'all, and thank the committee for having me. And I really look forward to the weekend. And I'm telling y'all, prime speakers coming up this weekend. So, thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down. And then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.